Yo, 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 yo. What is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and in today's video, we are going to be reviewing the PvP T5 data at a 60 mil threshold and above for KvK number 2, which is estimated at about 141 billion power. This is with kingdoms, and I'll show them to you now. 62, 48, 70, 3, 60, 49, 5, and 68, or better known as Noir from Kingdom 5, BXS from 70, GL from 68, Echo from 60, FG from 62, Kong from 48, NTS from 49, and RK from 3. We're going to give you an overview. We're going to show you a bunch of data. I'm even going to show you what I think is actually pretty well done, some screenshots that we ended up doing some overlay text and drawings on, and we have a number of them that we're kind of going to show you what our progression is, what our zone win predictions are, and then I'm going to give you some final thoughts here at the end. Because this KvK, unlike KvK number 1, I actually think has more of a sad chance to flop. And I don't know if I want to go as far as saying that this group is going to go down maybe in second place for probably the most disappointing KvK in COD history thus far. But you will see what I mean as we continue. And if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us some, because it helps out a lot. So let's start off by showing you the data, okay? And I say data as in data. All right, let's switcheroonie. And we're going to show you first off, right, so here's everyone in this group that you can see here, right? Total power on 141, 142 if you want to estimate. Now keep in mind, this data, at least on this sheet, was pulled post Brink of War, so about a day after that. As we move over to the current sheet, this data was pulled last night. So less than, 14, 16 hours ago, right? This was pulled. So this is very recent. Now, this is the matchup. So there's two matchups I'm going to show you. This is the first matchup that was initially spoken into the ether prior to Echo deciding to go Han Solo on Buddy. So let's go over this one, and then we're going to go over what the actual matchup is now. But this is, I just wanted to show for comparison's sake. So keep in mind, PvP power is 60 mil plus players in alliances that are at 3 billion power or more within a kingdom. And so when we break this down, we can see that at 60 mil plus, the two groups would have been 205 to 155 for 60 mil plus players. At 80 mil plus players, we're at 190 to 182. And for those who are wondering, like I said in the previous video, the reason why we're using the 60 mil as a threshold is because we showed off some of the free-to-play powers, along with just talking kind of more about low free-to-play, low spend, plus people that are spending more are most likely going to be able to reach first T5 unlock faster than a free-to-play is, because a free-to-play is probably going to have a lot more troops just on average trained by the time they hit a higher power amount. So for example, someone who's spending more than a free-to-play low spend can probably hit T5 at around mid-40s, right, give or take. I think the fastest or lowest power I've seen someone do it is about 42.5. That was Junie very early on in the game. Other people have said they've hit it around there as well. But if you're a free-to-play, we're starting to see some of the first unlocks coming around like 55 to high 50s millions. And that's because, again, they're training a lot of troops. They're growing in power by the time they get the first unlock. So we're just using 60 mil as a threshold, because that way you'll actually have a number, at least some number of T5 units at that power minimum. So then we look at 80 mil plus, we're at 190 versus 182. We look at 100 mil plus, we're at 155 versus 144, so getting a little bit closer here. 125 mil, we're at 63 versus 41. 150 mil, 22 versus 19 for the sides. 200 mil, 10 versus 12, and then we have some nice dirta here, if you will. These are kingdom powers, right? So Kingdom 3, 9.851 bill, Kingdom 5, 25.143 bill, right? That's pretty much mostly everyone-ish. I don't think anyone in the war has someone less than 60 mil from what I ended up seeing. For Kingdom 48, 9.035 bill, Kingdom 68, 17.627 billion. Then we go to the other opposition, which again was prior to the defection, if you will. We have 9.791 bill for 49, 19.291 bill for 60, 4.537 billion for 62, and then 70 has 20.865. Now, this is what the numbers look like prior to 60 Basically just giving them the bye, bye, bye. You know what I mean? Should have said that a little more animatic. Okay, so we have 645 T5s versus 553. That's a plus 92 in favor of the Noir group. I'm just going to say that to keep things simple, so I don't have to say everyone's alliance every single time. They're at 61.656 billion power versus 54.484 billion power. That's a 7.172 billion power differential advantage going to the Noir side. And then we look at 100 mil plus, it's 250, so it's a plus 34 going in favor of the Noir side. There is almost 1,200 total T5 players here, again, at 60 mil and above in this KvK. If we looked at the initial matchup, it's pretty clear, I think, based on this, that it could have been interesting. But do I think, and bear in mind, this obviously is, we're going under the guise that everyone is kind of putting in a baseline minimum of like same activity. Things can vary. Anything can happen where you have a number of people that just can't get on. Real life happens. There's always going to be some potential intangibles and unforeseen circumstances. However, if we're going 1-to-1 here on activity being consistent, right, the advantage goes in favor of the Noir side. I would even argue to say it's pretty clear that they have, I would say, not even a little advantage, a decent advantage, and that's at minimum probably being gracious. Now, if we look at the current matchup, and then we're going to show you some screens for in a moment too, you can see this is what the spread looks like here. If you were to take away the Kingdom 60 deets, you are left with 386, 35.193 billion, and 110 100 mils. That is not going up against Noir, just like Echo and ECH is not going up against the Noir group, right, if it's pure. However, this is where it gets interesting, because the way that the map plays out, I believe, very much has a role to play, sadly. And we'll talk about that probably in a later video, because I really want to talk about what I think are some of the biggest challenges right now with KvK matchmaking and why it is really, I would argue, ruining the game and the PvP experience. And we'll do another video on that as well. But obviously, for any of you that have any thoughts, I'd love to hear. Let me know in the comments down below. So let's get to some screens. And let me reposition some stuff. Hopefully this will be okay. We'll go bottom right. So this is how it looks for the initial matchup, which was a 3v3. And based on what we ended up seeing there from the power, you saw was 61.656, right? 54.484. We had 645, 553 for T5s, 252, 216, right? So even though it's not bad, it's not great, it's not good, it's, you know, it's a decently wide range. However, let's look at how this would, but like, let's play this out based on powers and data. So this is what it would look like at the current matchup that we're seeing. So let's go down and look at how this would play out on a 3v3. I actually believe that in this case, I think RKVM, Kong, WSO3, and 48 I actually think would most likely take 49 and 62 just based on total power. If you're looking at T5s, 100 mil plus, I think there is a little bit of an edge there on the RKVM, or I should just say the Kingdom 3 and Kingdom 4. Kingdom 3 and 48. So if we look at 3 as an example here, let me skadoosh over here. So Kingdom 3, at the moment, when it comes to 100 mil plus, right, they're at 15. 48 is 21. That brings us to 36. Kingdom 49 has 35. Kingdom 62, 4. So they're at 39. So they have plus 3 on 100 mil pluses. If we're looking at 200, right, we have, which is the RKVM Kong WS, right, they have 2 100 mil pluses. NTS has 3 100 mil pluses. If we're looking at, where were we going now? Oh, yes. If we're looking at total, where am I? Total T5s here. We have RKVM, we're at 125 plus Kong, so it's 225, 229, 249, 250 they're at for total T5s. On the other side, we have NTS 102, and then it would be FG 102, 162, 173 versus 250. So you're looking at 77 more T5s. You have a couple more hundreds at that point, but they have a little bit more power. So that's why I actually would give this an edge in favor of 3 and 48. We have this, which Echo and BXS, right, 70 and 60 would share this territory. 68 and 5 would share this territory as well, right? So this would give you basically one area for red on the, we'll say on the BXS side, and then 2 areas on the Noir side. If we continue, this is how I would have seen this play out, right? There's no contest here going into Zone 3. So 49, 60, 62 would have this for free. 70 would end up fighting GGWP, but I actually do give the edge here a little bit on the 70 to 68. If we're looking at some of the numbers here, 70 at the moment has 71 100 mil plus players. Kingdom 68 has 49. They have 22 more 100 mil players. If we look at T5s, BXS and XXB have 223 T5 players. If we look at 68, they have 196. So that's about 27 or so. So not only does 70 have about 27 more T5 players, but they have around, God, what did I just say? 22 more 100 mil plus players. On top of which, they have a little more than 3 billion power. Now, again, it is still close-ish, but I do give the edge out to them. So that's why I'm putting 70 here in Zone 3. It's pretty clear that 5 with Noir, 3 and 48 with RKVM, Kong WS would actually get into this Zone 3. So this would have been the potential matchup we would have seen. However, now we get to the next point here, which keep in mind, and I'm going to consistently say this, I think that this is consistently the wrong decision to have the adjacent Zone 3 passes, or the, Zone 3 passes, which is Pass 6, open up before Pass 7, which takes you into Final Zone. It should be reversed. Pass 7 should open up first. You should have 2 to 3 chapters worth of time, I'd say 4 to 6 days on average, of fighting in the Final Zone before the level 6 passes open into the adjacent Zone 3s. And I'll keep saying that, because that's just the way it should be. Nobody wants to see a KvK end in Zone 3, and we don't get any crescendo final boss Zone 4 action. That's the whole point. Why make changes and updates and landscape adjustments to your final zone to improve it if you're not going to allow people to actually enjoy what you're trying to improve and what people have been asking for? Doesn't make any sense. So, we look at this. This is how I actually would think this would play out. 68, I think, is, again, even if at this point they lose the Zone 3, they're probably going to keep consistently applying pressure, or they'll fight it out, and maybe they'll try and last until the level 6 pass is open. If they don't last until the level 6 pass is open, then I would argue they should probably call it quits early, reserve, and start refreshing or healing up, and healing up just in general, right? Just basically, preparing. Again, for when the level 6 pass is open. When that happens, then they would basically try to coordinate, because most likely it would probably be 5 going up against 70. 68 would hit them from the back. It would kind of be like a 2v1 sandwich. Then we end up getting on this side where 3 and 48 would end up probably defending the south. Maybe Noir would assist a little bit here and there as well with some people, because again, if you're just looking at numbers, they could probably spare 15, 25 people, give or take, to assist them down here if needed. Maybe even more if basically they're pushing. So I actually think that this is probably, when you're looking at it here, it may not look even-ish, but it's not really that bad-ish, if you will, and I don't mean to keep throwing a bunch of ishes out, but you'd have 60, 49, and 62 pushing here on this side. Then, right, the idea being that they're trying basically to maybe remove 3 and 48 so they could start applying pressure on 5, which would alleviate pressure on 70. The other way to do it is 60 could take this pass, do some assistance here with 70, maybe send some players over there. But my feeling is it's either you're going to split or you're going to all in on 3 and 48, trying to basically apply pressure on 5 so it alleviates a little bit on 70. And then if that's the case, 70 can maybe 2v1 this until they're able to circle back around. If 70 is able to push 68 out of the picture, then it can kind of start to become more of a 2v1-ish, right? That's kind of best case scenario. again, it's not perfect or ideal, but it's not god awful by any means. And so, I guess I would have been more excited maybe to see this versus anything else. But let's look at the other side of it now, right? So the other side here is, what if we play it out given the current matchup? So I actually, in this case, would argue that 60 with Echo has a good fighting shot against BXS. I actually, just based on the numbers, would give this Zone 2. Now, do I think it's going to be a hard-fought battle in Zone 2? And that's if both sides really commit? Absolutely, I do. But I do give the edge a little bit, teensy-weensy bit, over to 60. And if you're looking at the numbers, 60 has 106 players over 100 mil. 70, where's my 70? 70 has, oh gosh, hang on, I have to scroll down. Here we go. 70 has 71. So there's 35 more 100 mil players on the 60 side versus the 70 side. If we're looking at total T5s, we have 167 T5s at 60 mil plus on the Kingdom 60 side. On 70, we have 223, right? So you have, what is that, 33, 53, 50, you have 56 more T5s, but you have 35 more 100 mils, right? I mean, again, I want to point out, this is kind of like ideal situation we talk about, right? You want one side to have a little bit more 100 mils, but you want the other side to have a little more power and a little more overall T5s. This is, I think, a very close matchup, regardless of what side you fall on. But I like to value, I think the value for the 56 T5s is a little bit undervalued for the amount of 100 mil pluses. And let me explain why. So if you look at 200 mil plus, Echo has 70. BXS has 2, right? So they have 5 more players at 200 mil plus than they do. If you look at the 150 mil plus tier, Echo and Kingdom 60 has 13 players. Kingdom 70 has 6, right? So they have 7 more 150 mil plus players. If we look at 125 mil plus, 60 has 28. 70 has 8. They have 20 more. So if I'm just looking at those numbers, like we talk about, the value is not the same. Someone who is 100 mil versus someone who's 60 mil, you could maybe make an argument saying like they're double, maybe even 3-4 times the amount, even if you're just considering troops, right? Is it fair or safe to say that someone who has 10 million troops of T5s versus 2 million T5s, right? Let's just, as an example, could you say that they are 4 to 5 times more valuable as far as with fighting capabilities because they have more troops trained in that moment? I mean, that is an argument that could be made. So that's really, just to give a simple example, that's kind of what we're talking about more so, is higher power, more troops trained, right? You're able to last and sustain out there longer on the battlefield. So like I said, I give a slight edge, but I'd like to know what you think. You think, no, it doesn't matter. Kingdom 70, BXS is still going to get the job done, or no, I actually think Echo's going to get the job done. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Then, from here, this kind of progresses normally, right? 3 and 48 take this area. This is shared. We look at the next area. This is how, and this is where, to me, it is getting a little fascinating. And let me really explain this, because there are some things that could happen here. Which I don't think is great, but I do think it's interesting. So I think 60 would take this because they clearly, I think, would just overpower 49 and 62. It's not to say that I don't think they would put up a fight, but I just think in the end, I think there's a decent advantage going on the Kingdom 60 side versus 49 and 62, and that's only if they actually purely fought. So if we go under that premise, 60 would take the Zone 3. 5, 3, and 48 still would be the same no matter what. They would still take this. But this is where I think it gets interesting. So 70 or 68. This could play out one of either way. However, let's look at the numbers. 68 has 49 players over 100 mil. 70 has 71. So they have 22 more players over 100 mil. We look at T5s. They have 223 versus what we have for GG and WP, which is 196. So that's 27 more T5s that 70 has than them, along with having a little more than 3 billion power. I would argue that there is an advantage. I'm not going to say, I don't know if I want to say it's as much as decent, but I will say there is, we could say maybe below decent. I think there's more than a small advantage that's going in, so maybe it's decent-ish of an advantage for 70 to win Zone 3 over 68. Now, if this happens, we could be in a situation where, for all intents and purposes, this could still end up the same way, right? Because you'd have it would basically be like a 3, it'd be a 3-zone, 3 free-for-all at that point. And this could still very much pan out the same way, with one major difference, is that 60 would have to decide on what they're going to do, right? Because, and it's not even that, 70 as well. At this point, 70 would have to most likely still be fighting 68. So let's say 70 wins. Well, once Zone 3, once the level 6 passes open at this point, I mean, it's kind of over, right? Because even if 70 makes it to Zone 3, they win the Zone 3, I think that's still an accomplishment at that point. However, once the level 6 passes open, you're going to be fighting 5 and 68. Will 70 just say F that? And then at that point, they have to decide, well, are we just going to join them and then we'll push 60? Or are we going to keep fighting and will 60 ask for us to nap and then, and/or 5 ask us to nap, or sorry, the Nawar Union. We're not just going to, leave it up to them napping again. But we'll either side ask us to nap, and then we'll ally, which is really what it is, and we'll fight against the other opposition. Because then you still got to worry about, well, if 60 is going to have to fight against 3, 48, maybe some of 5, and then also 49 and 62 who's going to be hitting them from that side, and then potentially 70 who's hitting. I mean, it's just, I don't know how this ends up in a situation where we're going to get this pure 3-way free-for-all where 60 is going to attack 70, and they're going to attack 3, 48, and 5. 70 is going to attack 60, 68, 5, 3, and 48. And then 5, 3, and 48 are going to attack this way and this. It's just the potential of that happening where everyone is equally attacking each other. It's just very unlikely. And so it just, like, this all and like, again, you're seeing I'm having like these brain lagging moments. It's just, to me, it all culminates in it sucks. And it's one of the reasons why, like, do I think maybe we could get some Zone 2 action? To me, the only way I see any Zone 2 action happening that would be meaningful to any degree would be based on what Echo had decided to do by splitting up, right? So now they potentially do. However, keep in mind, and I'm going to refer back to the most disappointing KvK, which is the one with Nawar, TFS, EIS, and BXS, where TFS fought against BXS in that Zone 2 on the Calling of Courage map. And what happened? They fought for what? People were reporting like less than 6 or 8 hours of PvP in that Zone 2 and it was done. Right? Because the thought is, well, why are we going to go hard and fight in Zone 2 if we have Zone 3, which people valued a lot more than Zone 2? And again, that's not to say everyone feels that way, but it's a fact that there wasn't a lot of PvP that went on. And so BXS, whether you want to say, wave the white flag, they said retreat, whatever it was, right? They stopped fighting after a period of time due to whatever reasons. They opted to then go and fight in Zone 3. Did we see more fighting happening in Zone 3 than Zone 2? Absolutely. Is that something that other kingdoms and alliances and management and leadership teams will weigh? I think that they're going to think about it. So is there a chance that 60 and 70 maybe don't have a long, drawn-out, sustainable, serious fight? Very much so. And then if that's the case, wouldn't that just be absolutely hilarious? Because it's like a slap back in 60's face if 70's like, F that, man. We're not going to fight in Zone 2. We'll just wait till Zone 3. So you can kick rocks and enjoy farming on the Zone 2 land. Like, wouldn't that just be absolutely hilarious, right? Now, would it still be dope if they fought? Absolutely, it would. but who knows what's going to happen. That's why I think it not only is this KvK so interesting because there's a lot of storylines and I think a lot of different ways this can play out, but it also sucks. Like, it very much is disappointing to me when you think about each scenario, how it can play out, and how, again, is this the best matchup that we could have got? Right. And as I mentioned when we did the KvK number 1 breakdown, I said eventually I'm going to go through after I do the top 5 like these. Eventually I will be looking and breaking down the KvK matchups to see if the one that was agreed upon initially, right, or whatever the fair matchup is that people, presented as a balanced side versus side, is that the one that is the best, right? So we will eventually do that. But I'd love to know what your guys' thoughts are, right? How do you think this is going to play out? Do you think Echo should have just stayed in the Union? Do you think it's better now that they've split up? How do you feel about it, right? One of the things I even have thought about doing is like reaching out to each Kingdom leadership team and asking them, hey, did everyone come to the table? Did everyone say something? Did everyone give some feedback, have their voice heard? And then, was the matchup that was agreed upon, right, universally or unanimously agreed upon by everyone? Did some people agree? Did some people not agree, right? Maybe ask, like, when did conversations start just so maybe to try and kind of get a little bit if they may be willing to share anything. Because I will say this, I have heard reports, and I don't know if this happened in the KvK number 1, but I have heard reports for this KvK that the Nawar side was agreed to beforehand, and then basically just kind of left these other kingdoms to kind of almost have a forced pairing, which with 70, 60, 49, 62. Now, I've heard this from a few people that I trust that have told me this. However, again, I have not reached out to everyone to ask them, and that would be one of the things that I would do right before hard confirming and saying, yeah, this is absolutely what it is. But it does make you wonder, because this isn't like it's something new. This is something that has happened in KvKs throughout Kingdom Builders, where you get people that will either try and pair, and again, not to throw any shade against TA, but this is like the TA, and I'm not saying like TA the Nawar V2 effect, but and we're going to talk about that separately. But I will give you a small thing, like there were a few KvKs where TA and TK would ally with groups to have advantageous matchups, right? And we did number coverages on this in a few videos, and a few of the people had came to me at that point and said, yeah, they went with these. We didn't really get an opportunity to have a conversation with them, and we covered it in some previous videos if you search TA KvKs on my channel. And again, I'm not saying they did it for everyone, but a few of them, right, that's what we saw and that's what we had heard. And it's really just to bring up this idea that I hope we're eventually going to get to a point where it's not about the win, it's about the journey and it's about the experience. Because frankly, I don't care about cheap, flat, hollow wins. That doesn't do anything for me. I don't think that gives any kingdom or any alliance any actual cred and recognition that they think that they might get for winning a season. And I'm saying this generally and universally. We want to see a lot of PvP. We want the fairest and most balanced matchup. And whenever we don't get that, it just doesn't look good, right? Now, I'm not saying, and I'm not putting all of that on the kingdoms. I'm not putting all of that on the alliances or the leadership. Map design, the way matchmaking plays out, does have a factor. But given that we already know this, at least until something potentially changes, the remaining effect for the people's hands that it's in does fall on the kingdoms, the alliances, the leadership teams. So we'll see. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments down below. That's going to do it for me. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.